Hi guys, Aaron here with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns, and if you ever bought your P226 because the Navy SEALs used it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's right guys, today up for review is the legendary Sig Sauer P226. Now, first things first, I'm going to do our safety checks. Weapon is clear and decocked. There is no safety on this gun. Second, what is my relationship with Sig Sauer? I don't have a relationship with Sig Sauer. They didn't send me this gun. I purchased this gun myself at D&L in Warwick, Rhode Island for $700 used. It did come with a few accessories that made it a little more expensive. It came with a hard case, owner's manual, 2 magazines, and the original Sig Tac weapon light, which I have removed just for the review. We're just going to talk about the gun today. This is a 40 caliber model, by the way. 700, not bad for all the things that I got with the gun. That being said, the 9mm models are a little more expensive, so keep that in mind, especially with that package deal. But you can probably get them for around $500 to $700, depending on the model you get and what accessories it comes with in used condition. So, if you're new to the channel, the way we do things here is I like to break down the gun front to back, top to bottom, and I talk about the features and caveats of those features as I go, always starting with the sight. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The Sig Sauer P226 comes with 3-dot variety night sights. These are Sig Sauer's proprietary sights. They are not aftermarket sights, although there are aftermarket sights available for them from companies like Trijicon if you want. They're really squared off, equal height is easy to achieve, and the rear sight has a nice hard ledge right here on the front, so you can rack that on things like boots, belts, or any hard edges that you have available to you. Moving down from there, you'll note that we do not have front slide serrations on the standard 226 model, which is something that I like. I think slide serrations drive the cost of manufacture up, and unfortunately it also encourages you to put your hand near the muzzle, which I feel is never a good idea. Moving back from there, you'll see our extractor on this particular 226, and again, this is a standard model. It is long, it is thick, and I had no issues with extraction with this gun whatsoever. Moving back from there, why you got a nice close-up. There are the rear slide serrations. They're fairly deep, they're fairly wide, and you know what? They offer really good traction when it comes to actually manipulating the slide, which is really essential because these 40 caliber or 357 Sig models have an extremely strong recoil spring to deal with the higher pressures of that round. So you definitely want those nice, strong, deep slide serrations. It gives you really good traction. Now, on the other side, you will see right here, we have a 3-slot Picatinny rail, which is useful for your accessories, lights, lasers, that kind of thing. I do carry this gun, and I'm typically carrying it with a TLR1HL from Streamlight. It's a pretty good light, and it's a really good combination. Now, moving back from there, right here you have your disassembly lever, and what's nice about the disassembly lever is it really facilitates disassembly and reassembly of the firearm, and we'll get into that a little later on. Moving back from here, you have a decocker. So this is a double action, single action firearm. So when you initially pull the trigger, your first trigger pull is going to be that double action, long, heavy trigger pull. So it's going to articulate the hammer, bam, the gun will fire. After that, the gun will cycle and it will transition into a single action mode for all your subsequent shots. So here you have your decocker. So if you're done firing and you want to reholster this firearm, or maybe you're just moving a lot with it and you don't want the hammer back while you're running and gunning, you can decock it. So I will just show you that as best as I can on camera. It's a little difficult here, but your decocking lever is right here. Push it down, release it, and it drops the hammer safely without firing the firearm. Moving back from there, you do have your slide lock. slide release, whatever you want to call it, but it's very clearly intended to be a slide release on this particular firearm, just due to its placement. So it will lock back on an empty magazine, and then as you can see here, the slide lock is outward from the frame. It has some horizontal serrations on it, and it has a really good positioning as well as a really good shape and profile overall, because it does really allow you to actuate that no problem. You don't have to break your grip or anything to reach it on the Sig Sauer P226. It's an excellent slide lock with one caveat. The placement of it, while really nice for those reloads, unfortunately with a modern shooting grip, what I noticed was I tend to have my thumbs fairly high on the firearm. So while I was shooting it, I was actually riding the slide lock, and the firearm would fail to lock back on its last round because I was depressing that under recoil control. So if you have a really high grip like this, you might have to modify it. You might have to pull this dominant, like say I'm right-handed, so my dominant hand is my right hand. I'll have to lower my dominant hand thumb down just a little bit so I don't actually end up depressing that and causing it to not go into slide lock. Is that a huge deal? Not exactly. It could be, because personally I want to know that my gun is telling me, hey dummy, you're out of ammo, you gotta reload. But worst case scenario is you just get a click, you know, you reload, you slingshot it, and you're back in the fight. So it is a good slide lock, but you kind of have to train around it. Moving back from there, we do have a fairly generous beaver tail. I haven't had any issues with hammer bite, slide bite, or anything like that due to that generous beaver tail and the fact that it has a fairly high bore access for a handgun. Then you have the hammer. It is sort of a bobbed hammer almost. It's very abrupt. So it's a smaller hammer. It is serrated right back here, so you can cock it single action if you want, and it does have a relatively good notch for you to be able to cock or decock manually if you want to, so when you draw the firearm out, you can cock it no issue. And then of course it has the decocker, so no problems there. So let's talk about our trigger guard. So the trigger guard isn't the biggest out there, but it's certainly not the smallest either. I have no issues with it. It is squared off in front. It has some horizontal serrations right there, as you can see. Excuse me. It has a decent undercut right here. It's fairly thick. It's fairly wide. I had no issues with the trigger guard whatsoever. Just behind the trigger guard, you do have your magazine release. So the magazine release is relatively large. It is round. It is checkered in nature, which is a pretty nice feature to have, and it's very intuitive. It's very easy to find it. Drop your mag. I had no issues with it whatsoever. It is very, very good. Some people probably want theirs to be slightly enlarged or elongated. As you can see, I can't quite hit it with my thumb. I have to break my grip slightly. But again, that being said, I had no issues with it. Also, mags do drop free, so no issues there. The grip itself is really quite nice. If you look at the front strap on the grip here, it has some horizontal serrations right here to add just a little bit of traction to the gun. Is it the best? No, unfortunately, it doesn't really do too much for you because, as you just saw, they're very fine and they're very close together, so it doesn't give you that much traction. It might as well be smooth, in my opinion. The actual grip, now again, this is for the newer standard models that they have out there. It is a polymer single piece wraparound grip. It is made by Sig Sauer. It is textured, and it offers a really good grip angle and good texturing all the way around. I had no issues with it whatsoever. Pretty good grip, no complaints. And then of course, at the bottom of the grip, it is slightly flared right here to allow you to get a nice positive grip with that pinky finger. The magazine well is slightly beveled, left, right, and on the front, just a touch. I don't think it's a necessary feature due to the fact that most pistols these days are using double stack single feed magazines, so reloading the gun is quite easy, but it's a nice little touch to have. Speaking of the magazines, For the 9mm model, they come with standard flush fit 15 round magazines. For the 40 and 357 caliber model, they come with 12 round flush fit magazines. Of course, there are extended options available for both 9mm and the 40 357 Sig Mags. Now, why did I just say 40 357 Sig Mags? Well, if you take a close look at the magazine right here, you'll see printed on it, it will say Sig Sauer 40 caliber 357 caliber P226 magazine. These magazines are designed by Sig Sauer to use both 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 Sig. And it's really nice because the only thing you have to do with your 226 or even the 229 is simply swap the barrel out. You don't have to change your extractor, you don't have to change your magazines. Just swap the barrel out and then you can convert it from 40 to 357 Sig. The barrels are available on their website and they run about $150 to $180. There are aftermarket ones available as well, but why go aftermarket when you can get it directly from Sig? The magazines have very strong springs. They have obviously a plastic follower, metal springs. The entire composition of the magazine is metal besides the follower. Drop free. I had no issues with the magazines whatsoever. So that leaves me one more feature to talk about before we talk about disassembly, reassembly, accuracy, and reliability. And that is the trigger. But before we get into the trigger, if you want to support the channel, remember to comment, like, share. You can give a super thanks if you're interested in supporting a little bit more, that is. And then, of course, I do have a Patreon. It's $1 a month. Get you exclusive content. I do Q&A sessions every couple of months is when I try to do it. And you can submit your questions through Patreon and have them answered in a separate video. So thank you for the support. I'll put links in the descriptions for that kind of stuff. And without further ado, let's talk about the trigger. So the trigger on this gun is a double action, single action trigger. It is a smooth trigger, no texturing of any kind, and it's just okay. So the first thing you notice here is you have a double action trigger pull right here, and you have zero take up. You can actually see the hammer starts to move immediately, and then it's long, and then your brake is right about here. It's not a bad trigger. It actually reminds me of the trigger that was on the Beretta PX4 Storm that I did. Beretta calls it a constant action trigger, and it's designed to have the same amount of pressure all the way through that trigger pull, which I do believe they did quite a good job with. This Sig Sauer P226 is almost identical to that. It is a 10-pound trigger, very easily a 10-pound trigger, but it is really smooth and consistent all the way through. And then if you're interested in a double action reset, it's all the way out. Okay, it's all the way out there. Now, the single action trigger pull is kind of interesting. So, right here, you got quite a bit of take up on the single action trigger. It's not particularly all that short. So you do have quite a bit of take up right here. Then you hit a wall, and then you have a pretty clean brake. This one was very lightly used, so it is hard to say whether the trigger will remain this way or whether it will get better with time. I suspect it will get better. Sig claims that it has a 4.4 pound single action trigger. Most people have said that it has a 4.5. However, I will say it does feel a little heavier. It does feel, at least this one feels a little closer to 5 pounds, but I could be wrong. So keep that in mind. Sig claims a 4.4 pound single action trigger. And if you're interested in your reset, here it is right here. It's kind of long, and then you do have more take up right after it resets. It's not like this very consistent, clean break and reset. It's not the worst. It's not the best. Overall, it's a good trigger, and I didn't have any issues with it. So that takes care about all the features of the gun. Let's head over to the table and we'll talk about disassembly and reassembly, and we'll talk about accuracy. The disassembly and reassembly of the Sig Sauer P226 is a relatively simple affair. All you're going to do is lock your slide to the rear, like so. Remove the magazines from the firearm. You're going to depress your disassembly lever down like so, and then you're simply going to ride your slide forward, push it off the slide rails, and that gives you the slide right off the gun. Now again, this is a black nitron finish from Sig Sauer. The next part is you're going to remove your magazine, I'm sorry, not your magazine, your guide rod assembly in recoil spring right here. Now this is a non-captive spring. This is a metal guide rod. It is skeletonized, which is interesting. It's actually hollow in there, as you can see. Pretty simple affair. You know, wipe that down with oil, you're good to go. The barrel, you're simply just going to push it forward, lift it up, and pull it to the rear, and out it comes. It is a good barrel. I've had no issues with it. And as you can see right in here, the fit and finish is pretty good. There are some light machining marks in a couple places, but overall, the fit is pretty damn good. They did a good job with it. Now, let's take a look at the frame. Again, it is a metal frame. And as you can see right in here, pretty good job machining everything. And nice long slide rails right up the front, and then of course there's a further section in the back right there. But yeah, I mean, it is a pretty smooth shooting gun, even in .40 caliber, because of these nice long slide rails. So reassembly is basically the exact opposite process. You're going to take your slide, you're going to make sure it's upended, you're going to put your barrel in, push it down, and slide it to the rear to allow it to lock. And then what you're going to do is take your recoil spring and guide rod assembly, and you're just going to slide it into the cavity in the front of the slide that you can see right here. And now this is where it gets kind of tricky. You kind of have to be firm and in control of this when you insert it, because it is not a captive spring, and it is a very, very stiff spring, so it can be a real pain in the ass to get the gun back together. The next thing you're going to do is, once again, upend it. You're going to slide your slide assembly back onto the frame. If I can do that here. It's a little trickier to do it on camera. There we go. And you're just going to pull this to the rear, locking your slide back by pushing up on your slide release. Push your disassembly lever back into position, and now you can release the slide and do your basic function check. And that's it. It's back together. So while we're here, let's talk about accuracy. What kind of accuracy can you expect from the Sig Sauer P226? So for me, I got pretty dang good accuracy out of it, and understand that these are not my best targets. I actually had a bunch of targets for this, like another 4 or 5, and I don't know where they are. I apparently lost them. With that being said, these are not my best groups. However, the gun is capable of decent accuracy. This is more of like a 2-inch group right here. This is about 1.5 inches, so that's not a bad group right there. This is closer to a 2-inch group. Again, not my best work. And then I really have no clue what the hell happened there. Moving on from there, I think these were some of my earlier shots with the gun. I put 2 in just about 1 inch, and then I had 1 flyer up there. I had some vertical straightening on this one. This one is just over 1 inch, and this is about 2 inches right here. With that being said, I did note on my better targets that I was able to print about 1-inch groups with these with just a little practice, and then once I was really started to speed those groups up, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So I think it's really a 1-inch gun. Accuracy is pretty dang good on the Sig Sauer P226. So as you can see, the disassembly reassembly of the Sig Sauer P226 is a relatively easy affair, especially with the disassembly lever. And I have no issues with it. Reassembly can be a little tricky, especially in the .40 caliber or 357 SIG models, simply because that recoil spring is so stiff. You have to be pretty careful when reinserting it so it doesn't fly across the room. Accuracy, I mean, 1-inch groups were easy to achieve with this gun. It is a very accurate pistol. I had no problems with it out on the range from day one all the way up until today. So accuracy is good. Obviously, you saw when I disassembled the gun, the quality of the firearm is also quite high. Let's talk about reliability. Now, I have over 500 rounds on this particular gun, and I have shot a couple of other 40 caliber models in different trainings, and I had no problems with them. I had no problems with this one. It was 100% reliable. So, I mean, overall, it is a really good gun. It's powerful, it's accurate, it's due to its 34-ounce weight, it's fairly soft shooting, even in 40. It has a decent finish to it. No real issues. I have no really big complaints about the gun, except for this slide lock, like I said, riding it not locking back, but you can train around that. So I normally get very excited about a gun when it is extremely good or it's extremely bad, right? If it's really good, I get excited, like the Canik TP9 SA Mod 2 review that I just did. I was really excited about the gun because it was a pretty high quality gun and an excellent trigger. I was able to shoot it super fast and super accurately, and I really, really liked that gun. The Sig Sauer P226, I wasn't able to shoot as fast. There's nothing about this gun in particular that I find exciting. It's actually a little underwhelming. And I was hoping I would like it a lot more than I do. That being said, I do like it. I do carry it, and I would trust this gun with my life. However, don't expect anything too exciting from the gun. A lot of the hype is that it was used by U.S. Navy SEALs up until fairly recently. And a lot of people bought it because if it's good enough for the SEALs, it's good enough for me, and that's largely true. But again, it's a little underwhelming. Would I buy it brand new at like the $1,200 price tag? No, actually I wouldn't. I bought it used for $700, as I mentioned, and with all the additional things that I got with it, the extra magazine, the hard case, the weapon weight that came with it, which is a decent weapon weight. Yeah, that's about where I would be into this gun, but if I had to go out and buy one full price, I wouldn't do it. I would just get a different option. So, with all that being said, it is a good gun, and I do recommend it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please remember to like, share, subscribe, all the things that I mentioned earlier. This has been Aaron with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns. I got nothing else for you. Have a nice day.